UFC is all about putting on the biggest events. These are the moments fight fans remember for the rest of their lives. The greatest night of fights ever assembled. This is the UFC 300 pre-show with Tom Albano, Zain Bando, and Brett Cagle on the Empty the Bench podcast network, presented by Playback.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition live stream from the Empty the Bench Network, UFC 300. Ladies and gentlemen, the day has arrived. It is fight night. It is the most important fight night, probably in UFC history. We have a card that is stacked from top to bottom, filled with absolute talent. I mean, I am very excited for this card, everybody out there. I mean, this is, and we talked about this on the most recent episode of the MMA Outsiders back on Thursday, which you can check out at youtube.com/ETV network. This might be the biggest card on paper in UFC history. It's definitely the most stacked. And actually, Brett Cagle now is going to be joining me. Brett, how are you?
What's going on, Tom?
How are you?
Big day.
I know. I can't wait. This is the day we've all been waiting for, and I can't believe it's finally here. It seemed like time has kind of flown ever since it was first announced, but here we are, and I feel like there's just going to be so much that happens tonight, and there's a lot to cover. So we're going to break it all down for you here on this live stream. First of all, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Make sure to follow us across social media on Facebook, X, and Instagram at MMA Outsiders ETB. Make sure to follow the network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Shout out to everybody who is watching us on the ETB Network and MMA Outsiders Facebook and X pages. Do go subscribe to our YouTube home, youtube.com/ETB Network. We just passed, I think, 720, 730 subscribers. So please help us continue our little climb there. Of course, we're every episode of the MMA Outsiders. Obviously, this live stream is a bit of an exception. But if you want to take the MMA Outsiders cast on the road with you, make sure to go wherever you get your audio-only podcasts. Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so much more. Go to etbpodcast.com for more content from the ETB network, more information about the network, plus all the all the blogs that have been coming out, because they have been cracking out blogs like absolutely crazy. Brett, obviously you have your Brett's Bets, which goes out on shorts, on the blogs as well. And actually, Brett, we will have a special Brett's Bets live edition of Brett's Bets at the end of today's stream. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Brett had a very solid track record as of late with some of his picks. So maybe Brett can help you earn some money to help enjoy the entertainment for tonight's card.
Yeah, up until last weekend, we were pretty hot. Had the method of victory and the winner in the co-main event and main event for 2 weekends in a row there with Rose Namajunas. So yeah, hopefully we can get back on track here at UFC 300. So I'm excited to break some fights down.
Absolutely. Brett Cagle, by the way, Brett, who is actually making his, technically this isn't the MMA Outsiders episodes, but making his on-screen debut here.
Yep.
For Phantom Sports Industries, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
All right. So there's Brett Cagle. And then, of course, unfortunately, Zain last minute was unable to make today's stream. So it will just be Brett and I for today. Hopefully he's available to join us tomorrow for our post-show stream. I know Pat Dana, producer Pat, will be with us tomorrow. So
Pat's up there in Vegas right now, isn't he?
I believe he is. I know. Actually, he's celebrating his 21st birthday today. So if he's watching, a happy birthday to him. And I believe actually you and Zain Brett will be in Chicago next week for the PFL Chicago card.
Yeah, we will. We're really excited about that. And Pat's been doing some great work out there in San Antonio, and we're all over the ground here.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then, of course, I'm Tom Albano, contributor to MMA News, Fansided MMA, helping out with the PFL for their website during cards. So you actually saw, if you go to the PFL website now, to their results page, all of my work over there for the Las Vegas card that happened last night. So yeah, make sure to follow Brett, by the way, on social media at Brett_Cagle. Make sure to follow me on social media at Thomas J. Albano.
You want to talk a little bit about the PFL card we had last night?
Yeah, so I mean, the light heavyweights, just absolutely unbelievable. All first round finishes. It was kind of a blast.
Yeah. And Impa Kasanganay bouncing back from that fight with Johnny Edlin, in knocking out Alex Polizzi in the fashion that he did. That was really impressive.
Absolutely. And I think there was on the early card, you had an absolutely unbelievable come from behind knockout, down 2-0. Need to pull up which fight that was again, because my head is all over the place, unfortunately. News results. That was the Elvin Espinosa fight.
Yeah. Espinosa stays undefeated.
I know, and it didn't look like he was going to.
No.
Especially because he took that fight on just like days' notice. It was him and Adam Piccolotti, and all of a sudden he got the win. And thank you, Nick. Happy UFC 300 Day. Yes, it is kind of like Christmas here.
It is. Man, I'm so excited. Tom, we've been watching UFC for a long time. Is this the biggest card in UFC history, in your opinion?
I think it has to be. I think it has to be. Yeah. I mean, I know UFC 100, 200 had a whole lot of hype around them, but you look at those, like, I feel like UFC 100 was a lot better of a card than UFC 200 was, though UFC 200 had all the star power. And all the star power just kind of fell flat, especially after John Jones at that time tested positive for drugs 3 days before the card and ended up having to be removed. I think UFC 300 takes the star power that 200 had, took the excitement and the hype, and hopefully how things play out, the good fights that UFC 100 had, and kind of mixes it in to be, as you said, probably the best card of all time.
Yeah, I agree with you there. As the main event's concerned, not everybody was, super thrilled when it was announced. They wanted these mystical matchups with like George St. Pierre and Khabib, or whatever we thought we were going to get. But as we get closer to this, there's bad blood in this main event. Jamal Hill has a point to prove here as we enter fight week, and I'm really interested for this matchup between devastating strikers.
And I'll admit, I'm one of those that isn't exactly the most excited for the main event. Of the 3 title fights, the main event between Pereira and Hill is the one I'm least excited for. I'm most excited. It's weird. It's like the order they're going in from bottom to top is my excitement level. I'm most excited for Gagey Holloway, then Zhang and John, and then Pereira and Hill. But that's not to say it's a bad fight, and it's not to say that the rest of the card isn't going to deliver. I legitimately mean, for those who are going into this blind, top to bottom, there are people on here like, how the hell is Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt the first? Dana White said that we were going to do that.
Yeah, 2 former world champs
on the early prelims.
Yeah, the first fight of the night. Do you think the stadium's going to be packed with fans from the opening fight?
You have to pray and hope so, because usually it's not, for understandable,
especially in Vegas.
Usually, especially for understandable reasons, when you see the quality of the Apex cards, or you see who's fighting on the early prelims. But this is kind of exceptional. I mean, the early prelims, you go Figgy Garbrandt, Green Miller, Andrade Rodriguez, and Turner Moicano. Like, that's insane for a 4-fight early prelim card. And then that stretches into the TV card when you've got Aljamain Sterling's featherweight debut on the TV prelims. And you've got the debut of Kayla Harrison taking on another former world champion in Holly Holm.
Yeah.
So
world-class boxer versus world-class judoka. That's a very interesting stylistic matchup.
No kidding. So there is a lot that we have to break down. But before we do, I do also want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's stream and the sponsor of just the Empty the Bet network itself, Playback. So we had our first Playback stream on Thursday night when myself, Zan was there for a little while, Nick Morganson, my co-host on ETB Sports, Ben Cruz from Hitting for the Cycle, and Nick DiMartino for Moving the Goalposts. We were watching the Bulls, Pistons, and Knicks Celtics games. Both kind of ended up being a blowout, although the Celtics had a little scare for the Knicks late in that fourth quarter. But it was so much fun. It's such a fun platform to use, and all the watch along stuff is great. Zan, Pat, and I are planning to do something before the NFL draft, so you'll get to see the MMA outsiders do a different sport one of these days, which is kind of funny. But we will have some UFC stuff in the works, especially towards the summertime, if a certain announcement that I think is going to be made is going to be made. But just to shout Playback out, we are again presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETV network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right. So shout out to Playback. And I'll just start things off because I don't have a graphic for it. Before we get into the fights, Brett, your prediction of what I was hinting at before. Does Connor Chandler for International Fight Week get announced tonight at long last?
I think it does. I think that they're probably going to do one of these famous UFC promo packages right when the main card starts on pay-per-view, or in between one of these fights. I also expect there maybe to be another Hall of Fame announcement this weekend. Look for a few more things that the UFC is going to put on us fight fans, and kind of, tell us about the schedule for the rest of the year. I think that this Chandler and McGregor matchup has to happen at International Fight Week. I don't see Conor coming back not headlining a pay-per-view. And to put your biggest star on the biggest card you have left in the year only makes sense business-wise to me. So, yeah, I really expect that one to come. And that's going to be at the end of June this year, actually, isn't it?
Yes, because since now...
I think I lost you, Tom. You there? Tom? All right, fight fans. Tom is... You there, Tom?
Yep, there we go.
All right, we're back.
I was saying that basically WWE's Money in the Bank event is taking place normally when International Fight Week is. So I guess they don't want what happened a couple of years ago when both shows were airing at kind of the same time.
Yeah, since the merger, I feel like the conflict of schedules is probably going to go down a little bit, competing with one another.
Right, because I know their WWE is doing an event the same day as 301, but WWE is doing that in France, so they're going to be for the time differences. They'll be doing it in the afternoon here in the U.S., so that's not gonna conflict.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest WWE watcher in the world. I kind of started getting into MMA when I was about 12 and 13, and but do they go internationally very often?
For WWE, more recently, they've been putting a lot of their events in international locations. Like last year, there was like consecutively outside of WrestleMania, they had done like Montreal, they had done Puerto Rico, they went to London for one of their big cards. And now this year they have France on the docket. They've got Scotland on the docket, Germany in late summer. So a lot of international showings here. So, I mean, that's just probably going to continue with the WWE and UFC merge into one, basically.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to start at the top or the bottom of the card here?
Let's start at the top. Let's go right into it.
All right.
Main event, Alex Pereira defending the light heavyweight championship against Jamal Hill. And this is going to be a really fun. I want to say that this is going to be a striking matchup, but knowing Pereira and Hill's skill sets, this one's going to find its way to the ground and be competitive.
Yeah, I like this one to be standing. I think Jamal Hill, he's talked in the pre-fight interviews in Media Week saying that he wants to beat Pereira at his own game. I think there's a huge chip on Jamal's shoulder. I think he wants recognition from the fan base and respect as well. And I feel like he thinks the only way to do that is go in there and beat Pereira at his own game. Now, if he does do that, I feel like that's going to be, maybe the worst path to victory for him. And in a way, he gets caught by Pereira. We've seen Pereira is a dangerous counterpuncher. Sean Strickland tried to stalk him down and put his back to the fence. And
I was just going to ask. I was just going to ask. Has he not watched the Sean Strickland fight and what happened that time?
This is a guy in Alex Pereira you really have to mix it up against. If you go back and watch his fight with Bruno Silva, fight fans, that was an absolute war, and that's actually the only time that Alex has been to a decision in the UFC. So, I think this fight ends by knockout. I am going to favor the more technical kickboxer in this case, in Alex Pereira. But, Tom, I want to get your opinion on kind of the storyline that's going under the radar here in this fight. Jamal Hill took the belt off Glover Teixeira, former champion, mentor of Alex Pereira and trainer. He will be in the corner of Alex Pereira tonight. Do you think that redemption, for Pereira is a big factor for him coming into this fight?
I think so. I think this is, like you said, a little bit of an underrated storyline factor here. The fact that Jamal Hill took the belt off of Teixeira, and honestly, just also the fact that the light heavyweight championship has been cursed for what seems to be the longest time. Jamal Hill never lost the championship in the octagon. He ended up getting an injury, which ended up causing a fight between Hill and Teixeira for a vacant championship. And before that, you had Yuri Prohaska. He won the championship. He had to vacate because of an injury.
Yeah.
So this is a fight that hopefully, if you're Pereira, you're looking to stabilize the division and show that you are the top of the top at 205. And then maybe down the line, see what other challengers might come in your way. If maybe a fifth fight with Israel Adesanya ends up happening. But here, I feel like you kind of said, as much as Hill is talking about wanting to be Alex Pereira at his own game, we have seen people try to do that before, and we have seen the consequences of that. I feel like Israel Adesanya was able to do that because he has such a kickboxing prowess that he knows Pereira. That was his fourth time fighting Pereira between kickboxing and MMA. Mm-hmm. Jamal Hill, I feel like, he doesn't have what Israel Adesanya had in that fourth fight. He doesn't have the kind of world-class experience yet that Alex Pereira has. That obviously Alex Pereira is going to have more between the two sports and how long he's done it. But for Jamal Hill, I feel like he's got to use some of his grappling. He's got to use some of his wrestling to his advantage. Like you said, if he does not mix it up in there and he goes to his word and says he wants to outstrike Pereira, as much as I respect Hill's striking and know he's a good striker, I feel like that might be costly considering the power that Poatan has.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think it would be a smart strategy for Hill to at least maybe get some cage control against the fence and wear on Pereira. Maybe just make him hold your weight for a little bit so that his legs and arms tire out on his own. But yeah, I liked what you said about the stability of the division. I think that you're absolutely correct. I think the winner of this really, determines who the number one guy is. But Magomed Ankalaev has to be knocking on the door here. I know that his name's going to go under the radar with the Rakic and Prohaska fight that we're going to be talking about in a little bit as well. But I think one of those three men is going to be the next number one contender here at 205. But exactly like you were saying with experience at the professional kickboxing level, Alex Pereira viciously knocked out Dustin Jacoby in the world of professional kickboxing. And Dustin Jacoby, as we've seen, is no slouch. He's a very athletic guy, a lot like Jamal Hill was a former college athlete. And, when you have a guy in Alex Pereira who's, kind of a lifelong martial artist here, I know that his story started at 12 in the tire shop, and at 16 he started, hitting the mitts. But this guy has been doing it since he was 16. And when these other guys are playing other sports, it's kind of hard for them to get the reps in the striking that he's already had under his belt. And, I really like Pereira in this matchup. Of the final three, this is the one I'm probably the most confident in. Jamal Hill, this is the biggest fight of his life. I'm really interested to see how he responds to the pressure in this situation and how he responds to the moment, because Alex Pereira has been in there with Israel Adesanya at Madison Square Garden at huge cards that have almost sold 1 million pay-per-view buys and had sellouts in the arena. So he's been there. He's done that. And Jamal Hill really has a lot to prove in this matchup, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think the pressure is on Hill. Obviously, the former champion obviously never lost the title in the cage, so he needs to be able to put on performance that says, I'm still here. I'm still the top guy in this division. And against Pereira, I don't know if he can do that. I feel like you said, this is the pick of those 3 title fights that I'm the most confident in, and I'm going to go with Pereira, 3rd round KO or TKO.
I like that pick a lot. I'm going Alex by knockout as well. I'm going to go with the 2nd round. I think Jamal's going to come out very aggressive in that 1st round. He might even catch Alex and hurt him in that 1st round. But as Alex kind of gauges distance here and gets a read on Jamal, I think he'll be able to land that counter shot like he did with Yuri in his last fight.
Now, an interesting question, because you brought up Magomed Ankalaev. Obviously, the UFC is going to Brazil for UFC 301, and right now the main event is Alex Pantoja defending the flyweight title against Steve Erceg. It's very rare for the UFC to put on a flyweight main event. And Alex Pereira, the day after Dana White made that announcement about Pereira Hill as the headliner for 300, said his plan was to take care of business here with Hill and then do the quick turnaround. Number 1, do you think Pereira does so and the UFC allows it? Number 2, if the answer to that first question is yes, does the challenger have to be Magomed Ankalaev?
Yes, and yes to both of those questions. I think that Alex, if he goes in this weekend and does what we're saying and he wins by devastating knockout, I think that he will try and push the envelope and try and go at 301. Now, with Rakic and Prochazka possibly being the other contenders, I think that those guys are really going to go through a war in this one. They've called it the Battle of Europe between the two. There's a lot of bad blood there. I don't see anybody going down easy in that fight, and I also don't see anybody making a recovery within a month to get back on 301. So if that's the case and Alex Pereira does want to go back to Brazil and fight, Magomed Ankalaev does make the shoe-in contender there for that situation. But if you're Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev is the worst stylistic matchup for you in the entire division, in my opinion, with his wrestling. And also, he's very well-rounded and can strike as well. I'm not saying he's going to go in there and catch Alex Pereira. He certainly would look for takedowns in that fight. But, Magomed Ankalaev is someone who you're going to need a 6 to 8 week camp for, in my opinion, especially as a striker trying to get prepared for that Dagestani wrestling style that those guys possess. If you're Alex Pereira and you win this, I think it's a mismanagement on whoever his manager is. I feel like it's mismanagement if they throw him back in there against the worst matchup for him in the division on such short notice.
And you're right. I was ignorant to the fact that we've got Prochazka versus Rakic on the TV prelims too, but it does bring up the point that you and I are having the same thought before. Yeah. Obviously, we're talking about this before we get to that fight, but I'm concerned about Prochazka and Rakic if one of them is even going to be able to make that quick turnaround with the kind of action that they can bring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, nobody's really been talking about Ankalaev, so maybe they do have a plan for him, like you're saying, and they've got him on ice for 301 just in case. But
I mean, we have seen, and Zan and I have talked about this on a number of MMA Outsiders episodes, that first vacant title fight, the one that ended with a draw after Prochazka vacated the title, that against Jan Blachowicz, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was such a bad fight, a lackluster fight, that I feels like maybe Dana has something against Ankalaev, but we just saw Ankalaev had a big finish recently, so you have to hope that maybe some of that that performance kind of helped simmer some of that tension down if there was some.
Yeah, they're certainly not doing him any favors right now, but we've got a great main event for the light heavyweight division to start this card or to end this card.
Absolutely, and moving back to the co-main event, you got the women's strawweight title on the line. Weili Zhang defending the title against Yang Jinan. I I'm really looking forward to this fight. Now, I know a lot of people, specifically certain big mouth MMA YouTubers, were crapping on this fight when it was first announced. If you're crapping on this fight, regardless of where it is on the card, co-main event or not, I'm sorry, you're ignorant. How
Mhm.
how can you crap on this fight when you got Weili Zhang, who has made impact after impact in the octagon, had one of the greatest fights, the greatest fight in women's MMA history, one of the greatest fights of all time with her and Joanna right before the pandemic hit. The only one who's had Whaley's number in the octagon is Rose Namajunas, and she's not even in the division anymore. She's now up at flyweight. And Jan has some devastating power herself. And I mean, this was the fight to make. Now, like Zan has talked about in our show, is it a shame that this fight's not happening in China? Yeah, but I know there might be some logistical issues and some negotiating issues that make it hard for the UFC to have China cards. I mean, they've had a couple, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
a
all.
political situation, and you can't force anything.
No. So, but the next best thing, have them headline a card like a
Mhm.
300. I
Yeah.
know Dana had talked about wanting Whaley in Madison Square Garden, and he ended up getting his wish with the Whaley Rose rematch. So this is a big opportunity for both women here. Like I said, if you're not excited about this fight, I don't know. Do you just hate women's MMA?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a point, but two things really stick out to me for this one, and why I'm interested in this fight. A lot like you're saying with the nationality, both of these women are from China. The winner of this fight is going to be the champion and the representative of that country over here in America. So this is huge in terms of pride and legacy for these two girls, back home. And honestly, in my opinion, some of the best fights of all time, best grudge matches of all time. There's not bad blood in this matchup, but some of them are USA versus USA, Russia versus Russia. If you go back and look at like Sergei Haratonov and Alexander Emelianenko, or some of these wars that we've had between Poirier, Gaethje, and Eddie Alvarez, a lot of pride is on the line when these people from the same country, match up against one another. And, I just can't wait for this matchup. I do think that Weili Zhang is going to have a little bit of an advantage on the ground in this one. She has 8 submission wins on her record to Yan Xiaonan's 1. I think that she's going to want to use her physical strength. I think she's going to be, the physically superior athlete in this one. She's going to try and get Yan to the ground. Like you were saying, though, Yan can swat. She does have power. And, when you look at it, she is a volume striker, much like Rose Namajunas, who presented problems for Zhang Weili. So, I like this matchup a lot. I think it's actually closer than the odds makers are giving it credit, as Jan is, over a 3-1 dog in this matchup. I think that this could be a competitive fight. What about you?
I think this actually really can be a competitive fight. I think that this has the potential to be a real firefight, a potential fight on any other card, I should say, a potential fight of the night nominee, and it still can be. I just look at some of the other fights on here. Like, that's how stacked UFC 300 is, that this is just one of several possibilities that could be a fight of the night. I think the concern I have with Jan is that I mean, obviously, this is her first fight in nearly a year. Uh, I think this is Whaley's first fight since August. That was when she fought Lemos. I think it was 292 in Boston.
Yeah.
My concern is the recent 4 fights for Jan. She lost to Carla. She actually ended up getting finished by Carla. Dropped a decision to Marina Rodriguez. Very controversial split decision, I should add. So not the worst. A majority decision win over Mackenzie Dern, and unfortunately, it seems like Dern has taken a real step back in the strawweight scene. And then the knockout of Andrade, which was awesome. It was devastating, but Andrade is also showing that she may not be the same kind of fighter that she was 5 years ago when she was the women's champion. Having that kind of record against a woman who easily disposed of Carla, took out Joanna, knocked out Joanna in her retirement fight. I feel like when you look at the fight experience, it's, I don't want to say 2 different levels, but Whaley has shown that she has done, she has done everything to show why she's the top of the division. She has done everything to show why maybe, if the cards are played right, she may get a shot at flyweight, a chance to be a champ soon, depending on what happens with the rest of this division and what happens in September with Grasa Shevchenko 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is a fight where Yan Zhao has a lot to prove. I think she will put on a hell of a show. I think, like I said, they'll put on a fight where any other card, maybe it ends up getting fight of the night. Unfortunately, I think the championship experience plays out. I'm going to go with Weili by decision here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Weili by submission. I don't know.
Okay.
You know, like I said, I like the 8-1 when I'm looking at the submissions for Weili compared to Yan Xiaonan. And, Carla Esparza being able to be as successful as she was on the ground against Yan Xiaonan really sticks out to me as well. Do I think that this fight can go to decision and Yan Xiaonan can hang tough? I think that that's very much a possibility, and that's why I left it out of my best bets for this week because, this one, as I said, I think this is going to be more competitive than odds makers think. I'm not laying minus 500 for Weili Zhang. That's certainly a way to lose money as parlays are concerned. But, I really like this fight, and I'm very excited to see who comes out as the champion.
Now, moving on from this to the third title fight of the evening. You may mock it because it's a BMF title fight, but, I mean, my God. I will have a take. I don't know what you think of it, but they could have put Gaethje and Holloway at the top of this card, even without a title fight, and just doing 5 rounds. I think this pay-per-view still sells, if not sells more, with those two names at the top. Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, 2 of the most popular fighters in the UFC, 2 of the best strikers in the UFC, 2 of the best chins in the UFC. I mean, my God, this is going to be a firefight.
Yeah, 2 of the best resumes in the UFC.
That too. 2 of the best track records. Former interim champion in Gaethje, and now BMF belt holder, and a former featherweight champion in Max Holloway, who's taking the fight now up to lightweight.
Yeah, there's so many ways to break this fight down. I feel like we're going to be talking about it for quite a while here, but this is the one I'm most excited for on the fight card, and probably every fight fan is. If you want to just break it down X's and O's, I think that this comes down to the power of Gaethje versus the volume of Max Holloway. I believe that the longer that this fight goes, it favors Holloway. Now, I've seen a lot of pundits come out like Big John McCarthy and people who really know what they're talking about, and they have taken Holloway by decision in this fight. As I've gone back and looked at it, the only thing that really sticks out to me is the 3 fights with Alexander Volkanovski. When those fights went to the distance, Holloway really was outpointed due to massive leg kicks that Volkanovski was able to tally up over the rounds. And, Justin Gaethje is one of the hardest, best kickers in the history of the UFC. Him and Edson Barboza are guys that can literally stop you with leg kicks. So, as I'm looking at this one, like I said, I think Max, it favors Max as it goes longer. Now, Max has never been knocked out. That is another huge factor in this fight. 0 knockout losses on Max Holloway's record. But if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Justin Gaethje. And I think these guys are going to stand in the middle of the octagon and throw down and really put on a show for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody has the power to do that, it would be Gaethje. The other thing I have a concern about, Brett. Oh, I didn't even see Zain make a comment.
What's up, Zain?
All right. The other thing I have a concern about with this is that Max is competing at 155. Now, his 4 fights prior to the UFC, when he was a younger man, he did compete at 155. Then he ended up going to featherweight when he got into the UFC, and he did compete once at lightweight in the UFC. That was the interim title fight that with Poirier, the rematch with Poirier at UFC 236. Unfortunately, this is a case where, at least in my mind, based on what I've seen with Holloway, he might be too big for featherweight, but at lightweight, he's too small.
I agree.
He looked bad again. I don't want to say he looked bad, but he and Poirier put on a hell of a fight, but it was clear that Poirier and his striking completely outworked Max Holloway in his striking in that 2019 fight. And now going from that, having hit the run that he still had at featherweight, and now going back up to lightweight to take on somebody like Justin Gaethje, who is explosive, who is good with his striking, has some insane output. That concerns me a little bit. Now, with Holloway, we have to talk about he is one of the best boxers in the UFC. He is very technical with his striking. He has insane outputs too. If you look at his records with striking in the UFC and his records in striking with featherweight division specifically.
Yeah.
But how is that going to translate up 10 pounds? I'm concerned about how he's going to handle Gaethje's power.
Yeah, and I think your concerns are valid because, and I'll say it this way. I don't think that Max Holloway is a soft puncher. Certainly at featherweight, he packs a punch, and we just saw it in his last fight with Chan Sung Jung. But those guys who fight at 155, like I was talking about with the Poiriers, the Gaethjes, the Eddie Alvarez, those guys can take a shot. And there's not really many 145 pounders in history. Conor McGregor did it and still translated his power. But I don't know if Max Holloway really hits hard enough to get some of those guys out of there up a weight class. I think that really is, when he fought Poirier, Poirier kind of walked through some of his shots. And, Poirier's got a historically great chin and is a Hall of Fame fighter. But so is Justin Gaethje. And, I think that Max might get volume here. He's going to want to utilize that jab and keep distance. But do you think that this fight goes to the ground at all?
I don't know.
I don't see it. I don't see it. I know Justin Gaethje has the collegiate background, but he doesn't use it. I feel like if there was ever a time to use it, he would have done it already. But this would be as good of a fight as any.
Absolutely, this would be as good of a fight as any. But you know what? I don't see Gaethje doing it because he has, he did used to do it, I think, during his WSOF days. But ever since he's gotten the call to the UFC in 2017, he's completely abandoned it because he wants to be an exciting fighter. And Holloway's ground game gets underrated, but he wants to be, he always wants to put on a show just like Justin Gaethje. So I don't see it. I see the two of them instead just deciding, you know what, let's meet in the middle and let's just throw down.
I think the same way. Now, you were saying that the move up in weight might be a little concerning for you. Now, how concerning is it that when Holloway moved up in weight, he lost to Poirier, but Gaethje's last time out, he knocked out Poirier? He holds a win over the last man to defeat him at 155. How much of a factor do you think that plays?
I know maybe it's not the smartest move to depend upon the MMA math, but as you kind of say, MMA math is kind of indicating that this could be a bit of a problem. Now, this isn't to say that Holloway doesn't have a great chin, because Holloway was able to eat every punch that Poirier gave him. Holloway has been able to eat everything that Alexander Volkanovski has given him without ending up in a knocked out position. But all the signs are kind of indicating that it feels like Gaethje has got this one. So I don't think Holloway is going to get knocked out, but I think I think this is going to end up being a fight of the night, if not a fight of the year contender. But I'm still going to go with Gaethje on a clear unanimous decision.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gaethje by knockout. I think that Gaethje is actually going to get the finish here. So, as I said, I think that Holloway, it favors him later. If this goes to the distance, I could very well see Max Holloway winning. I just think that when over 5 rounds after this is tallied up, he's going to probably have 70 to 80 more strikes landed than Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje loads up for big right hands and leg kicks, and everything he throws is to get you out of there. But his style is not necessarily the greatest for winning a fight by decision.
Fair enough. But
you never know. It's MMA, and they could get into a war. And we've seen in the past where you get knockdowns in rounds and steal rounds, and the guy can't make it up. So it could happen. You never know.
You're causing me to bring out my favorite sound effect that I haven't used in a while.
Sometimes these things happen in MMA.
Well, hopefully we don't get one of those kind of brawls there that causes a moment like that of Nashville.
Mayhem Miller.
But let's leave the mayhem for official fights like this. Gaethje and Holloway. It'll be absolutely fun. This is for a great lightweight matchup for the strikers, and the lightweight picture could definitely change based on this matchup. It could also change up on the fight prior to that, a matchup for the grappling fans. Another lightweight title eliminator bout in Charles Oliveira, the former champion, taking on Arman Tsarukyan. And I mean, my God, you've got the Brazilian jiu-jitsu prowess that Charles Oliveira has and his submission game. And you think about the lineage of the of the path that of descendants when it comes to who has trained Oliveira. And then you've got Armin Sarukian, who ever since he's gone to the UFC, I think his wrestling has just gotten better and better.
Yeah, and Sarukian took on the champion Islam Makhachev in his debut. Went to a decision with him.
I think that I've talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Pat and Zan. I feel like if you are a fan of wrestling and ground game in MMA, or if you are a fan who needs to see the beauty that the ground game has in MMA, watch that fight from 2019 in St. Petersburg, Sarukian versus Makhachev.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And even the fights with Gamrot and Ismagulov, all of those guys are very well-rounded mixed martial artists.
Absolutely.
But yeah, as far as this one's concerned, we've got a wrestler in Armin Sarukian versus the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and the UFC record holder for submissions in Charles Oliveira. If Sarukian does try and take this to the ground, I believe that he might be susceptible to get caught in like a guillotine or some type of choke and a scramble. But normally, historically, when we see two grapplers go at it, like if we go and reference Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman in those fights, when we see two grapplers go at it, we normally see a fight that takes place on the feet. Who do you think has the advantage standing in this matchup?
That's a good question. I might have to go with Oliveira, though, because we've seen him have success with his hands, too. When he won the championship against Michael Chandler, that was because, A, he showed resilience when Chandler tried to finish him with his strikes, and then B, taking that momentum in the second round, changing it, and he ends up finishing Chandler with his strikes, with a TKO.
Yeah, I think Oliveira has the better chin in this one. I don't think that Sarukian's chin's really been tested. Now both of them hold knockout wins over Beneil Dariush in recently as well. I think the odds makers are really taking the youth of Sarukian. He looked good in that Dariush fight with that straight right hand, and Dariush couldn't even react to it. Sarukian was so explosive and got in the pocket so quick. So I think I'm sorry, what did you say?
Sorry, Brett, but I'll counter that because Charles Oliveira, he had just as much success with Dariush when they fought at 289.
He did. He absolutely did. Now, I think that it was more of a one-punch knockout kind of with Sarukian. He might have the better punching power, just pure punching power, but I think that Oliveira's chin is a huge factor in this matchup, and his ability to go in there and take shots, as he's done in the past with all of these great fighters like Dustin and Justin, like we've talked about previously. I like Oliveira in this matchup, and were you surprised that odds makers had Sarukian favored so heavily?
I think so, because I feel like, now that Oliveira had that loss to Makhachev, and then, of course, they were supposed to have the rematch. He ends up being hurt. And kind of like what you said before, Brett, I feel like the odds makers are taking Sarukian's youth and that knockout of Dariush maybe a little too far, because Charles Oliveira has the championship experience. He has been in there with the best of the best at lightweight. Now, Sarukian, his only loss in the UFC, 1 is to Gamrot, and 2 is to the current champion himself in Islam Makhachev, but that was when Makhachev was still making his name. We haven't seen Sarukian tested against an Oliveira, a Gaethje, a Poirier, anybody, Chandler, anybody like that, who is at the top of the UFC game at 155. So I feel like, even though this is the fight of the main card that I'm the least confident in, I feel like if there's one fight, I'm going to go with the underdog. I think it's this one. And I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira in this one.
Yeah, I am too. And even though we're talking about the wrestling of Sarukian and, how accomplished he is, he did get, beaten on the ground by Islam Makhachev and Gamrot. They were both able to take him down at times and find success. Now, do I think Charles Oliveira is going to go out there and take Sarukian down? No, I don't. But I think that if it gets to the ground and Sarukian invites the takedowns, I think that Oliveira, I'd really like to see, I really hope that at some point this fight ends up in Oliveira's guard with Sarukian on top, because I kind of want to see how Sarukian reacts to that and how much he's improved from the top position since those fights.
And I want to see this fight go to the ground at some point too, because I feel like if there's two people who can show let's face it, the more casual fans, I guess is the term we'll prefer it. Those who hate the ground game. I think Oliveira and Sarukian are two guys who can show that the ground game can be just as exciting. Obviously this isn't taking place on a place like Brazil or Japan where they will see a transition into a half guard or a transition into side control and do the applause and cheer for that. But I feel like if there's two guys who can show that this can be great, why an Armin Sarukian?
Yeah, I think so too. I think that these are both very world-class grapplers, and but I do believe that as we're talking about this, like I said, I think that this fight primarily will take place standing due to them both, I believe, thinking that the juice won't be worth the squeeze to go to the ground against the other fighter. And we've seen that in the past, like I've said, and I think that Oliveira is going to get this one done, but the bet that I was looking at for this that really stuck out for me was over a round and a half. I see this fight being very competitive, and I think that this fight may go to the distance. When you're looking at total round betting, just getting through the 2-minute and 30-second mark in the second round, I think that is something that could very easily hit.
And not only am I going to agree with you, I am going to say that this one will end up going to a decision. And I think Oliveira will get it. I don't know about 30-27, but definitely a 29-28. I think Sarukian has the ability to steal around, given his power, given his wrestling. But I think the championship level experience that Oliveira has is going to end up aiding him so much here.
Yeah, I like that a lot. The championship experience aided Dustin Poirier in his fight with Benoit Saint Denis at this same weight class just a pay-per-view ago. So I'm going to go with you as well. I've actually got Charles Oliveira by submission. I think that he's going to catch Armin in some type of transition, and he might be winning the fight on the feet, and Armin looks for a takedown because of that, and it ends up being the end of the fight, and that's kind of what I'm predicting here. I think Charles Oliveira will have an advantage in submissions.
All right, now moving on to the opening bout of the pay-per-view card. I know this one's a very unpopular choice to open it, but let's face it, we know what the UFC is doing. They see everything in Bo Nickal. They want Bo Nickal to be, the fighter on the opening, to open the pay-per-view card. He's done it before, but 2 other pay-per-views. They see Bo Nickal as a next big thing at middleweight, and I feel like Bo Nickal, it's against Cody Brundage, and I don't want to. Hopefully, I'm not coming off too disrespectful for Cody Brundage, but a 4-4 record. I mean, this isn't the kind of. It's a little bit of a step up for Bo Nickal, but in terms of at least somebody who has the experience. But I don't know if this is going to be what shows Bo Nickal and his true capabilities. I feel like Bo Nickal, let's face it, he should be earlier in the card. He should be one of the early prelim fights, but they want to kill Bo Nickal maybe the first. I think people went into when this fight was first announced expecting that it was going to be the early prelim fight, but they want to showcase Bo Nickal on the big stage. Now, obviously, there's good reason for it. Comes out one of the best wrestling programs, probably the best wrestling program in NCAA in Penn State. Is probably the best wrestler that Penn State has had in their modern history. So I feel like with that, they're going to, it's obviously no surprise that they're going to market Bo Nickal as much as they want, as much as they can. I just don't think people are as excited for this fight as the UFC thinks.
Yeah, I agree with you there. If this was, say, Bo Nickal versus Joe Pyfer, I think that, fight fans would be a little bit more intrigued. But at the same time, I see that the UFC doesn't want to kill off 2 stars at once. If you throw them to the Khamzat Chimaevs or the Joe Pyfers, then, one of those guys is, their stock's going to plummet. And, business-wise, I don't know if that's the greatest idea. But as far as this matchup's concerned, I actually think that this matchup is more interesting than some people are giving it credit for. Cody Brundage, last time out, just stopped Zachary Reese with a slam. Zachary Reese was an undefeated prospect as well, 9-0, 6'3" at the middleweight division, and was an athletic striker from Texas who a lot of people had high hopes coming into his UFC debut against Cody Brundage. He actually got a triangle choke locked in against Brundage, and Brundage slammed him and knocked him out unconscious with that slam in his last time out. So I think that, Brundage, he might be the most experienced fighter Bo Nickal's faced. This might last longer than any Bo Nickal fight has thus far. And, that might be just 2 or 3 minutes, but Bo hasn't been out of the first round yet. So, there's a lot to see with Bo, and I think that we're going to, see a little bit more. But an interesting thing to me is the first Bellator event I ever covered live was Bellator 290 at the Mohegan Sun in December of 2022. And Pat Downey, Olympic team member with Bo Nickel, both of those guys competed at the Olympic trials and were credentialed collegiate wrestlers. Pat Downey took on a fighter from Memphis, Tennessee named Christian Eccles in that contest. Pat Downey came in 3-0 in a 28-1 favorite at the Mohegan Sun, even bigger of a favorite than Bo Nickel is this weekend. Now, Cody Brundage and Christian Eccles have a lot of similarities. These guys are, fighters who will go 2-1 in their career. We look at Brundage's record; he's 10-5. But these are guys who have made a career of not getting taken down, kind of anti-wrestlers. And if he can stay on the feet, in Christian Eccles in that fight with Pat Downey won by knockout. Pat Downey went in and took him to the ground and tried to submit him. His arms gassed out, and when he got back to the feet, he couldn't defend himself. I'm not going to say that that's happening with Bo Nickel in this contest, but I'm just saying that, with these credentialed wrestlers, when you're in a fight that's harder than you expect it to be in, it can go downhill quick. So I might throw a little bit of money on Cody Brundage just because the line is so big. And we've seen things like this happen in the past.
We have seen things like this happen in the past. You're absolutely right. I feel like that's what's going to, by the way, test Nickel the most is if this fight can somehow get out of the first round. So we can see what his stamina really is like when he has to take on some of these tougher guys. He's got to develop one way or another. So hopefully Brundage can be able to do that. I just don't know. By the way, that is a term that I've seen thrown around when talking about somebody like a Brundage, an anti-wrestler. But when you look at the prowess that Bo Nickel is coming into this fight with, I don't know if Brundage is going to be able to avoid being taken down. I have my doubts.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, Bo might even, we just saw him in his fight with Val Woodburn. I know, some YouTube striking coaches went out there and said that they didn't really like his technique. But, what I saw was 3 punches landed that ended in a knockout. So, Bo Nickel might not be the most technical striker in the world, but he gets the job done. And against Cody Brundage, his striking might be good enough to get the job done on the feet as well.
Right. And actually, if you look at it, both of his finishes so far in the UFC have been TKOs against Val Woodburn, and then a little bit of a controversial one against Jamie Pickett in his debut. I want to see if Bo Nickel, though, can show his wrestling prowess and then up his grappling game a little bit. So I'm going to go with a first-round finish. I want to see Bo Nickel get a submission.
Hey, it could happen. We saw in the Contender Series with his fight with Beard, he was able to knock him down and then transition into that beautiful triangle. So he certainly has a lot of submissions under his belt that he hasn't shown yet.
All right, now moving off from the main card, going over to the prelims, headlining the prelims. Interesting matchup at light heavyweight. The former champion Jiří Procházka, just like Jamal Hill, never lost the championship in the octagon. Although you can say maybe Alex Pereira finished that once and for all when they fought at Madison Square Garden. He'll be taking on Alexander Rakic, who has been made for himself, wants to show that he's ready for a title shot as well.
Yeah, and Rakic coming back from that devastating leg injury against Blachowicz, we mentioned that earlier. He's been off for over a year now. I'm really interested to see what his movement looks like. I would have loved to have seen his open workouts this week with him hitting the mitts and just seeing, how that leg has responded to him and how mobile he is. But Jiří Procházka is a tough guy to come back against. So creative, so dynamic, so dangerous. And he's going to have a lot to prove in this matchup because he's not going to want to drop 2 fights in a row. He's going to want to get back into title contention. I thought that he looked good in that first round against Alex Pereira. But with those 2 guys, they're so dangerous that you knew it was at some point somebody was going to get caught with something big. And that's exactly what happened. So in this matchup, I kind of think that Alexander Rakic is a more technical striker. I think that Jiří Procházka takes more chances. We're not going to see Alexander Rakic do spinning elbows like we will see with Procházka or flying knees. But, Alexander Rakic is by the book, leg kicks, straight 1s and 2s. He's a very powerful athlete, 6'4", wide frame, and somebody that people are interested in. We would have liked to see more in that Jan Blachowicz fight just to kind of get a read on Rakic as a contender. But We're going to find out a lot this weekend.
Absolutely. And while I think Prohaska, you're right, does take a lot more chances than a Rakic does, I feel like he has success. He's smart with his chances. And he can be just as technical as anybody. Don't let the power finishes fool you. Yuri Prohaska, we talk about how he is, well, how UFC fighters are kind of the modern day warriors. I think the perfect image of that is Yuri Prohaska.
He's a samurai.
He is, yeah. He depends on some of those old samurai practices, his old samurai training methods.
You've seen him train out there with the katanas and stuff. He's got like swords and
insane. I love it.
Yeah,
I love what he does. And you know what? I was really looking forward to his UFC debut. It was a few years ago when he was coming over from Ryzen, and he has shown why he can be one of the best at light heavyweight. And he was worth all the hype. And you know what? You're right. He takes chances. Maybe Rakic is going to catch him on one of those chances, but I'm going to say it's been a theme with me here, but I'm going to go with the championship level experience. And I'm going to say Prohaska, I think this is another fight of the night nominee. I think both of them are going to put on a striking, clinic in there. I think Prohaska is going to have a little more in the tank. I say second or third round finish for Prohaska.
Yeah. I don't see this fight going to the distance, honestly. Most of Yuri's fights don't get out of a round or two. And Alexander Rakic has the ability to turn your lights off with one punch as well. Now, like you were saying with getting caught and Ryzen, to bring it up, we had King Mo Lual knock out, Yuri Prohaska in his first loss in that Ryzen Grand Prix tournament. Do you think that Rakic can pull something off, kind of like Pereira and King Mo did, in catching Yuri in between these creative strikes?
Yeah, absolutely. Rakic has that striking ability. Like you mentioned, he's technical. He will be very patient. He'll look for an opening on Prohaska, and he will be able to get it. The only concern I have is I think Prohaska has, a really good chin to stop that. You can look at that King Mo knockout all you want. You can look at the Alex Pereira knockout all you want. But, those are two guys who had some good power. Don't underestimate King Mo's power. So
absolutely.
So I feel like Prohaska can take a punch. In other words, I feel like Rakic can catch him, but it's going to take more than just one time catching him in order to put Prohaska away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And once he does catch him, that's kind of when you got to be worried about Yuri, that he's going to pull off one of these crazy things with his back against the wall. So, I think that all of these fights have a potential to be fight of the night. But with the bad blood on the line with these two guys from Europe, they've been talking a lot online leading up to this. And the face-offs were very intense between these two. I think this could easily be fight of the night, and it might be the best fight on the prelims from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah, and you definitely have to watch out for anything that Prohaska might be able to dish out. I mean, the spinning elbow that landed to knock out Dominic Reyes is still one of the best knockouts of all time.
Yeah. It might be the best elbow knockout ever.
It certainly is. Absolutely. All right. Looking at the rest of the prelims, you got Calvin Kattar taking on Aljamain Sterling. It's Aljo's first time at 145. And you know what Dana does with former champions when they change a weight class. He does not give them an easy task.
He's into the wolves.
Yeah. He's going to take on the Calvin Kattar, who, I mean, this, I think, just off of the eye test, this is going to be your prototypical striker versus grappler matchup. And I feel like it's going to come down to a couple of things. One, you mentioned cage control when we were talking about Pereira versus Hill. Can Aljo get some of that cage control to hopefully, neutralize some of Kattar's striking? And number two, if Kattar's going to throw and land, is Sterling going to be able to take the kind of power that Kattar can deliver? We've seen Sterling on both ends. We've seen Sterling, show some power and get a win. Where I think back to his knockout in 2017 that kind of made his name in the UFC. And we've seen him get in trouble in times.
Yeah. And, Aljamain Sterling has experience against a lot of high-level strikers. Sometimes it works out for him. Sometimes it doesn't. Flawlessly went in there and submitted Corey Sandhagen in under 2 minutes in that fight. And Corey Sandhagen is a great fighter. 5'11", just like Calvin Kattar. Another fighter that he's fought that's 5'11" is Sean O'Malley in the last fight.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of O'Malley and Qatar's game is similar. Does Qatar have the one-punch knockout power that O'Malley does? No, he doesn't. But he also does hit hard, and he hits hard enough to finish anybody. We saw that with the Giga Chikazed fight. He can go in there and kickbox with world-class kickboxers. But Aljamain Sterling, like I was saying with Corey Sandhagen, like you said, I think that he has a clear path to victory in this one, and it's to get the cage control and then eventually work Calvin Kattar to the ground and then get back control. Now, this is going to be interesting to me. This is an East Coast Boston versus New York fight here on UFC 300. Both these guys are very respected and, pillars in the gyms that they are at. So, I really like this matchup. Like you said, it's classic striker versus grappler. I think Aljamain Sterling is going to want to try. It's going to be interesting to me to see how Aljamain gets inside on Kattar, how he gets past that jab in those leg kicks. Because Kattar has one of the best reaches in the entire weight class. But Aljamain Sterling looked in tremendous physical shape yesterday at the weigh-ins. So I think this is a really close fight. But Aljamain Sterling's grappling, I believe he has a little bit higher of an advantage there than Kattar does on the feet.
I could see that. I could definitely see Kattar landing something that will stun Sterling and cause a finish. But I feel like Sterling, as you mentioned, has the abilities and has the prowess enough with his grappling that he is going to be able to take control, get to the ground, and then I don't know if he's going to be able to work a submission, but I think the grappling, the control that he's going to have against the cage and on the ground might be a little too much there. So I kind of want to lean to Sterling, and you kind of fueled my fire on that a little bit when you mentioned how it is a New York-Boston matchup. So I should be siding with my fellow New Yorker here, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I think that I like Sterling by decision in this one. I think he's a very tough fighter, and I think he's going to want to prove something up a weight class. If he loses this one, where does he go? Now, Calvin Kattar has lost 2 in a row already. I don't think a loss for him means the end of anything. Everyone knows Calvin Kattar is, a top 10 fighter and somebody that's, I don't want to use gatekeeper because I think that's a derogatory term, but, he really is. He's a good test for where everyone else in the division is at times. And he can win matchups that favor him stylistically. But Aljamain Sterling's a former world champion. He comes in with the pride of a former world champion. He comes in not wanting to lose 2 in a row and, wanting to make it sure to himself that, he's got a career left in this new weight class. So I think that Aljamain Sterling is the play on this one, and I'm going to take him by decision.
I'm going to agree with you 100%. I'm going to go with Aljo by decision as well. And as you mentioned, even if Kattar loses, he loses to a former champion. That's not the worst loss. So
exactly. But if Aljo loses, then it's like he's in limbo, So I think there's more.
Aljo has more to gain and more to lose in this one.
Exactly.
Moving on, speaking of gaining and losing, we've got a hell of a debut on this one. Kayla Harrison, the former 2-time PFL world champion, going over to the UFC. Kind of throwing a little bit of a wrench in PFL plans. And now she's going to be taking on Holly Holm. First of all, Brett, what did you make of her weighing in? Because she weighed in at 136, first attempt. There were all these questions about how she can beat at 155. I believe her fight in Titan FC was at 145. And then she goes and faces Holly Holm and ends up making the 136-pound non-title bantamweight limit. But, did she look – it looked like it tired it out a little bit, but like I said, she was able to get it on the first try.
Yeah, I liked what you said there with the gains and losses opening up the segment. But, she had to lose 20 pounds in this one. You're right. And, the word that sticks out to me when talking about this is professionalism. And Kayla Harrison's had to do this as a professional in the Olympic Games. She's had to make weight, like you were saying, at 145 and 155. And, she had 3 months to prepare for this, came in there and killed it on the first attempt, got the 136, didn't have to drain her body down to 135, just took the pound allowance and moved on. And, did she look a little drained? Yeah, but I think that she's going to have time to recover here. I think that if anybody's accustomed to being drained after a weight cut, it's probably Kayla Harrison with her Olympic days. So, I think that she handled this weight cut like a true professional. That's what I got to think.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of sticking with the theme of gains and losses, as we just talked about with Aljo, is this also a situation with Kayla Harrison, where is everything to gain and everything to lose?
Yeah, and honestly, I think her and Bo Nickel might, outside of the title fights, her and Bo Nickel might have the most pressure on them on this card. Kayla Harrison goes in here and loses to a 43-year-old Holly Holm, who some people have called past her prime. I'm not going to say. I think she can still compete well with people, and that's up to Holly when she wants to hang it up, because she's certainly a Hall of Famer. But if Kayla Harrison comes in here and loses to a 43-year-old version of Holly Holm, that doesn't say good things for her career. And, we were talking about, where does Aljo go if he loses? Where does Kayla Harrison go if she loses at 135? And this weight cut was a disaster, and that's an attributing reason to why she lost. Then you're in limbo with her, because you don't really have an 145-pound weight class in the UFC that's that active or has, current rankings. Kayla Harrison's going to come in here and dominate this fight, in my opinion. I think that she's someone that performs at her best when the pressure is on her. She lives up to the moment, and I actually think that Kayla Harrison's going to get a finish in this matchup. We've never seen her with elbows before. She's a dominant physical athlete, and can get Holly to the ground. If she gets on top of Holly, look for those elbows and look for submission attempts as well. I think Kayla Harrison's going to make a statement in this matchup.
Considering how much of a perfectionist we've seen Kayla Harrison be inside the cage, and considering the championship level experience that Holly Holm has had, do you think Kayla Harrison's going to be able to get that first round finish that she desires, or do you think it's going to have to wait till like round 2 or something?
I think she's going to wear her down in the first round. I think she's going to try and put elbows and heavy ground and pound on her. But at the same time, I think Holly's experience is going to get her through the first round. I think that somewhere in the middle of the second round, Holly's going to, she's going to be underneath her, and she's going to wonder whether she wants to do this for 2.5 more minutes. I could see her getting ground and pounded. I could also see, an arm triangle or some rear naked choke submission as well. Kayla Harrison is just so physically strong. I just really like her chances in this one.
Yeah. So to transition over to my thoughts, Brett, I'm going to say what I said a few months ago, and that the reason Kayla Harrison and the UFC were able to work out a deal so quickly is because the fact that there is no 145 division. But then for 135, days earlier, before Kayla's signing was official, you saw the Raquel Pennington-Marijuana Silva fight, which, I mean, no disrespect to Pennington, glad she has the belt, but the fight was a disaster. It was probably one of the worst fights. And the UFC, that was the UFC saying, oh, bleep, without Amanda Nunes, without some of these bigger names that we don't have anymore, like a Ronda Rousey and Nunes, oh, bleep, we don't have the star power. We need something here. We need somebody who has the talent and star power. And they swooped in and got the Harrison deal done. And you know what? It's kind of, that's why I'm actually looking at this fight with pressure on all ends, because not only is it pressure for Kayla Harrison of a matter of where she goes next, it's also a matter of, if she loses this fight, what the hell's the future at 135? Because none of the matchups right now at 135, I don't know if I should say none, but there's a few in there that just don't seem as entertaining. Like 135, women's 135 right now, of the weight class in the UFC, right now it's looking the weakest.
Yeah, and I certainly want to see Juliana Pena back in the mix. I'm from the Midwest. She's from Chicago. I'm from downstate Illinois. I really like her. And, I think her ability to trash talk and get people interested in the division is vital.
Yeah, that's one of the, that's what I was talking about, was one of the exceptions, is the Pennington Pena title fight.
Yeah.
So,
and I'd like to see Juliana Pena fight Kayla Harrison maybe down the road. I think that would be a great fight as well.
So then this is a fight that Harrison, for the sake of her own sake and for the sake of the UFC, she can't afford to lose.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. She's got so much pressure on her, and the company's got pressure on them. So I think that they kind of set her up with a matchup that they thought that she could really show out for the fan base in.
And I'm going to completely agree with your prediction. I think Kayla Harrison will be able to take control of the fight, but with Holmes' experience and what the kind of talent she's been able to face, Harrison's not going to be able to get the first round, but she'll be doing enough to, as you put it, wear Holly Holm down, tire her out. So that way, when Harrison gets ground control again in the second round, the ground and pound can work there. I'm going to go second round TKO finish.
Yeah, we got the same thing for that one.
Love it. TV prelims. TV portion of the prelims are going to open up with another interesting matchup. Sadiq Youssef taking on Diego Lopez.
All right, so Sadiq Youssef, we saw him with Edson Barboza last year. That was one of the fights of the year in 2023. He certainly has power in his hand and is an entertaining fighter, but so is Diego Lopez. And Diego Lopez made his debut against Movsar Evloev, the undefeated fighter, still in top 5 contenders. So, he proved in that matchup that he could stay. That was a really close fight, 29-28 decision that went for Evloev. But there were times where Lopez was threatening, submissions on the ground with triangles, and also he's got great length. And since that fight, he's rallied back with 2 straight victories in the UFC. So he's someone that everybody's got an eye on. He's very tall for the weight class. I think that he's very well rounded. I think he can get wins on the ground with submissions, but he can also hurt people standing. I think that, for me in this matchup, I think that Sadiq Youssef's biggest problem is the length of Diego Lopez. Youssef is one of these guys that's kind of shorter in stature for the division. He's very physically strong, but I really want to see how he gets past the jab and some of these kicks from the outside of Diego Lopez.
Your breakdown is completely parallel to mine. I have those same concerns.
Yeah.
I have those same concerns about, Diego Lopez has some great reach on him, and it's pretty clear they saw Lopez's performance against Evloev and before that. And I feel like the UFC looks like they see Lopez as something for the future. Youssef is a hell of a talent for the now as well, so it kind of this is actually perfect matchmaking sense in my opinion. Take somebody like Sadiq Youssef, who just fought a fight of the year contender towards the end of last year. Put him in the cage against somebody who's an up-and-comer like Diego Lopez and see what wins out, because whoever wins this fight, world is their oyster at that point. There's going to be more opportunities for them. And if these two can put on a fight of the night contender, maybe that goes for both men.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a huge headline. If these guys could steal the show at UFC 300 and put on a massive fight that fans remember, I mean, that would be great for their careers. And now with the bonuses that Dana White up to
$300,000.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge for these two guys who might be the lowest paid guys on this card, quite honestly. I don't know what their contracts look like, but there's a lot of former champions that I'm sure have gotten to, heights in their contract that they haven't got to quite yet. But the winner of this fight, like you said, I think the world's their oyster, and I think they move immediately into a main event slot. You can put these guys main eventing fight night cards, either one of them, to be honest with you.
Well, let's face it, this fight should be, under normal circumstances, second or third when a co-main event or just under that. When if this was a fight night at the Apex or something like that, this could be a little later on the TV prelims or on pay-per-view opener on any other pay-per-view card. Yeah. But look, that just shows the stackness that this UFC 300 is, and it doesn't hurt them because this is an even bigger platform than normal.
Yeah, and just for reference, UFC is going to have a fight night in St. Louis next month in May. And the main event currently for that fight right now is Nascimento versus Derek Lewis. Now, as a fight fan, I'd rather see this matchup be the main event, in front of 10,000 people than that. So, that's like you're saying, just shows how stacked this fight card is. And, I can't wait to watch this from beginning to end.
By the way, that is the main event, unless Joaquin Buckley has anything to do with it.
I know. I thought that was hilarious. He goes, "Come on, Dana. You know, Derek doesn't want to fight 5 rounds." Derek's probably sitting at home like, "I don't want to fight 5 rounds."
and here's Dana just avoiding a question, saying, "Thanks for coming."
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "I'm not doing business in front of these people."
All right, let's look at the early prelims now real quickly. Main event of the feature fight of the early prelims. You got Jalen Turner taking on Money Moicano. I like this matchup. You got Jalen Turner, who's made a name for himself, was one of the younger up-and-coming fighters at lightweight. You look at his reach and his striking. Jalen Turner has what I call the lanky body, in which he is skinny for the weight class, but also he's got such long limbs that he's able to land from anywhere. He's got great range. And then you got Money Moicano, who has a lot of momentum on his side. People love him for his post-fight promos. He's got some great grappling experience. So does Jalen Turner, though. He's shown some ground game. I like this matchup to be the featured of the early prelims. Although there is a matchup on here, I'm like, really? That's not the early prelim headliner?
Yeah, I like a lot what you said. Two fan favorites here. These guys both come in with fan bases for fighters who are, in the back half of the rankings. Two of the most well-known guys here in the lightweight division. The tallest fighter in the division, and Jalen Turner at 6'3", 77-inch reach. Like you said, that's a huge factor in any matchup that he goes into at this weight class. Moicano, we've known him as a guy who gets into these exciting fights, but wildly, he doesn't have many knockout wins on his record. And honestly, if we look at it, I think he might have it's 0-1. I think that he never has had a knockout win in the UFC. Now, we've seen him get knocked out by Rafael Fiziev and some other guys. He's lost 3 times by knockout. But, I like you said, we got 2 guys who are good at grappling. I think this one kind of stays on the feet here. Turner, to me, is going to have an advantage on the feet. Southpaw with the length. I see Turner getting this matchup done. He's 28 years old. Moicano is 34. Turner's kind of coming into the prime of his career here. We saw what he did last time out against Bobby Green. That was one of the most vicious knockouts that I've seen in a long, long time. And I was scared for Bobby's health there for a little bit. I can't remember who the referee was in that. Kerry Hatley, maybe. But that fight should have been stopped way earlier than what it was. But Jalen Turner is a great prospect at 155 pounds, and I like this matchup a lot. And I think this might be striker versus grappler, with Turner wanting to stay on the feet here and utilize his length, and Moicano really wanting to get him down and get past that length.
By the way, you are correct. It was Kerry Hatley for that fight.
Was it Kerry? Yeah. I think that stuck out to me. I was like, I think I was screaming, or one of the broadcast people were screaming at him like, stop the fight, Kerry.
Yeah, I would say give me flashbacks to Dan Hardy and Herb Dean.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen some of that stuff with these officials at times. I hope there's not any officiating blunders or anything, this weekend. We kind of saw a weird ending to that Sadabusi Josh Silveria fight yesterday, and I hope all these fights just get through with no injuries, no controversy, and we just get a great night of fights.
I know. I can't help to feel like the last time we had a hype card like this was coming out of the pandemic. It was 261, and that's when we saw the Chris Weidman injury.
Oh, I remember that.
I'm knocking on wood right now, hoping I didn't just jinx anything.
Yeah, let's.
But you know what? But you know what? I'm gonna break my common theme because when it's been the youth versus experience, I've gone with the experience. When it's been championship level versus non-championship, I've gone with the championship. I'm gonna go with the youth on this one because as I said before, the length and reach that Turner has, the range shots that he's able to have, and even if Renato Moicano tries to get this one to the ground, I think like Turner's limbs are so long that he's going to be able to get around whatever Moicano brings there. I'm going to go with Turner in this one. I feel like Turner's going to have a lot of momentum on his side. Like you mentioned, the knockout of Bobby Green. And now if he gets a win over Moicano, Turner's going to show he's ready for the next level tonight.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to ask you. He wins this one. He really shows that this is a turning point for his career. And at 28 years old, if he can go and rattle 2 to 3 more wins, he's looking on the door of a title eliminator. So
yeah, if Turner wins this one, give him top 10 next.
Yeah, and I know his record is 14-7. He's a tremendous athlete that early in his career was taken down and kind of controlled at times. I don't think that, like you were saying, Moicano is going to have problems with the length getting in there, getting him to the ground. I think Turner may be the physically stronger fighter as well. So that could also, be a factor in Moicano not getting the fight to the ground. On the feet, I believe there's going to be a massive advantage for Turner, like you're saying. I'm going with Turner as well by knockout. I'll go round 2.
I'll go late round 2, early round 3.
Yeah.
All right. Looking at Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez next. I mean, like I mentioned before, Andrade has been at the top of the women's divisions at both strawweight and flyweight for a while now. But it's been a little bit of a rough road recently, although I believe she's coming into this fight off a knockout win.
You're talking about Marina Rodriguez?
Or Marina Andrade. Well, Marina Rodriguez
just knocked out Dern.
Right. She did knock out Dern. And Dern, obviously, like I said early in the program, she's kind of lost a step or two, whatever, ever since she got rid of Perillo as a striking coach. Marina Rodriguez, though, she is also coming off of a finish as well, finishing Michelle Waterson back in, I think it was September. So I feel like this is going to be an interesting one. And I feel like this is going to be a test for Andrade to show, hey, I'm still here.
Exactly. It's kind of, and this is a Brazilian affair. We were talking about the Chinese co-main event that, that had a lot on the line. So does this. This is the old guard of the Brazilian women in Jessica Andrade versus that next wave in Marina Rodriguez. Both are strikers. Get it done differently. Rodriguez is more of a volume striker. We saw with Michelle Waterson that she was able to get her out of there. But Jessica Andrade has, one-shot power that can knock people down. She's a very physically strong athlete. I think this one will take place on the feet. I think that these two girls will go at it. And, I think that Marina Rodriguez may get a decision win here as an underdog.
I'm going to agree with you. I think Marina Rodriguez has the energy. This is one where I think the youth wins out. And I feel like she may be able to control on the ground and end up getting some sort of submission. If that doesn't work, she'll ground or pound her way herself to a win.
Yeah, I think there's many ways for Marina Rodriguez to win this fight. I think Jessica Andrade can get it done by stoppage, but I think that the volume of Rodriguez in this one is going to take over the power of Andrade.
Fair enough. I like your analysis there. Looking at the next, I can't believe it. I can't believe these two next fights are opening the card. First of all, you got Bobby Green taking on Jim Miller. Jim Miller making history. UFC 100 participant, UFC 200 participant, and now UFC 300 participant.
Yeah, and it's historic. We saw him use the UFC 100 Letterman's jacket. It was kind of flexing on everybody at the media days with that. He's like saying it was an extra large, though. He was hoping that he was going to grow into it by now. But, Jim Miller is 4-1 in his last 5. He still packs a powerful punch. We saw that in the Jesse Butler fight, winning that one, by vicious knockout in 23 seconds. His last loss was to Alexander Hernandez. I will say Bobby Green has fought the better competition recently compared to Jim Miller. But Bobby Green was just viciously knocked out, as we talked about in the last breakdown with the Jalen Turner fight. So, there is a lot to think about in this one. Miller comes in as a betting underdog, but also has 20 wins on his record. How do you see this one playing out? Do you think that Miller will try and stand and trade with Bobby, or do you think this one hits the floor?
I think this is going to be a stand and trade kind of fight. We've seen Miller and his power. Bobby Green has shown his power as well. He's been in there with some fun striking matchups. I feel like both these guys are two guys, especially with $300,000 bonuses on the line, that they'll just stand and trade.
Yeah, and I want to ask you one more thing. Now, Bobby Green, the last 2 times he's been knocked out were by southpaws, Jalen Turner and Drew Dober. So Jim Miller, also a hard-hitting southpaw. Do you think that plays a favor or plays a factor in the fight?
I think so. And also considering the fact that even though Jim Miller is, for lack of a better term, at least in UFC terms, old, I mean, I compared Jim Miller, Brett, to Frank Gore in the NFL. How Frank Gore for years as a running back, you feel like he's going to slow down, and he just never did. And with Jim Miller, exactly. And Jim Miller is a Mr. Reliable of the UFC. That he just goes and goes, and he doesn't stop. He never slows down. So I feel like you said, also with the southpaw stance that Jim Miller brings, I think that's going to trouble Bobby Green. And you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go Jim Miller gets a finish on this one. Why not? Second round finish.
I am too. I think Jim Miller gets it done. I think Bobby Green's coming in a little emotional after that knockout loss. And, he was getting in Jim's face when they were doing the face-offs the last 2 days. Do you think he kind of struck a nerve there with Jim? Because Jim is really respectful to everybody, and
I know
he's one of the good guys in the sport. And Bobby kind of got in his face and was like, he was talking to him. He was doing his Bobby Green, trash talk. So
and Miller smirked about it. And we've seen a couple of cases in UFC history, a couple of famous cases at that too, where the fighter who comes in all sort of confident and such, and getting in the face of whoever their opponent is ends up paying the price for it in the actual fight itself. You think about Joanna versus Rose Namajunas the first time they fought in MSG, and then the one that really sticks out in my mind, because I was in Atlantic City celebrating my 21st birthday that weekend it happened, was Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm.
Yeah.
Ronda
Those
said,
are two big ones.
those are the two big ones. And I feel like that kind of play, that this isn't, the more we talk about this, the more it isn't helping Green's case in my mind.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about that is in both of those situations, I thought that when they got in, the face of the other opponent was kind of out of character. Ronda was always edgy, but was never a bully leading up to that Holly Holm fight. She was respectful of Kat Zingano, respectful of Alexis Davis. When she went in there with Holly Holm and was kind of trying to bully her a little bit, I think that was false confidence. I think that she knew that she was facing someone that was different than everybody else that she had fought. And what was the other
Joanna Rose won.
Same thing. I think that she was also, seeing someone in front of her that was going to be a really tough challenge and was trying to physically and mentally intimidate and bully someone kind of out of a place of false confidence. But Bobby Green does this, and that's what I'm saying. It was kind of out of character for those two fighters, but for Bobby Green, he's somebody who's kind of done this his whole career, So, maybe we were expecting him to be a little nicer with Jim Miller with him being vets, but it's not out of character for Bobby Green.
Fair enough. I'm still going to side with Miller on this one.
I am too.
I feel like I said, Green's not helping a case here.
Yeah, Green's been submitted as well in the past, and Jim could, I think there's multiple ways he could win the fight.
For sure. Opening the card, though, Deiveson Figueiredo, the former flyweight champ, moving up to bantamweight now, taking on the former bantamweight champion in Cody Garbrandt. Figgy has shown in his first fight at bantamweight that he was able to, he's translating everything well from the times of him being the flyweight champion and his wars with Brandon Moreno. And it's translated well so far with 135. And now it's going to take a test with Cody Garbrandt, who a former champion, but a former champion who's kind of lost a step.
Yeah, and to me, this is Cody's first fight back against elite competition. Both these guys world champions. Cody did pick up 2 wins in his 3-2 in his last 5, but we saw the knockout losses to Kai Kara France. And he really looked depleted at 125. But so did Figueiredo to an extent. And I liked what you said about him translating up. I think that this is the weight class for Deiveson Figueiredo. I think he's going to make a move up the rankings. And, when he was at 125, I thought that the speed, he always had power, but I thought that his speed was just a drastic difference when we saw him make his debut here in the bantamweight division. Cody Garbrandt's chin to me is a huge factor in this fight because Deiveson Figueiredo is a powerful puncher, one of the most powerful punchers in the history of the 125-pound division. Now at 135-pound, we saw in his last fight that he still packs a punch. Cody Garbrandt to me is going to go in there and try and get back what he lost a few fights ago, and that's respect and a ranking. So, this is a big fight for both these guys' careers. I like Figueiredo in this matchup. What do you think of the chin of Cody Garbrandt, and do you think it can hold up against Figueiredo's power?
I think Garbrandt still has somewhat of a chin, but it's definitely far from the same as it once was. I feel like the losses to Dillashaw, the loss to Pedro Munoz 5-6 years ago did that damage, and it just was no coming back. And now taking on somebody as powerful as Figgy was, with how powerful Figgy was at 125, look and see how powerful he is at 135. And I think Figgy is going to get this done probably early second round. I could very well see a potential where he gets it done in the late first, but
I'm a huge Cody Garbrandt fan.
I really like Garbrandt too, and it's tough for me to say, but that's the reality we're in right now.
Yeah, I mean 2016, 2015 when he fought Dominic Cruz, I was like 15 years old, trying to find my way into a Buffalo Wild Wings to watch him fight. And when he beat Dominic Cruz, to this day, I think that is the best performance and outclassing in a title fight that I've ever seen against someone who was a longtime champion. He went in there and just completely dismantled Dominic Cruz, but that was a long time ago. And like you said, he took significant damage in those TJ Dillashaw fights. And, those are historic bantamweight contests, in some of the best fights in the history of the division. But, he's going to have a long road back up there, and he's got to get through Figueiredo first.
Fair enough. All right, now to end things. Hold on, let me set the mood a little bit. Let me take this background off here. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Let's get you the solo layout, Brett. Here we are. It's time for a live edition of Brett's Bets with Brett Cagle. Brett, take it away.
All right, fight fans, you've heard us talk here for about the last hour and a half. I've got Alex Pereira in the main event versus Jamal Hill, former Glory two-weight world champion and now two-weight world champion in the UFC. The most devastating striker on the roster, Alex Pereira, just beat Yuri Prohaska for the title last time out. I've got him by knockout in this matchup. Hill has made a statement in the media coming in that he's going to try and beat Alex Pereira at his own game standing. I think that that's a mistake. I think Pereira catches him with a counter in the second or third rounds, and that's the end of the fight. This is going to be a very entertaining fight. Jamal Hill is a great champion who never lost his belt inside the octagon, but coming off an Achilles injury, I don't know where the mobility is at, and I'm going to favor Alex Pereira if this fight stays standing. Plus 130 for Pereira right now at FanDuel Sportsbooks by knockout. Okay, we're going to abstain from the co-main event. I think that is going to be a closer fight than odds makers believe, so I'm going to move on from that one. And we're going to go to Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. I believe Justin Gaethje gets this job done, and I'm going to go money line minus 140 for Justin Gaethje. This betting line has moved down significantly throughout the week. Gaethje opened at close to 200. It gets closer to a pick'em as we enter this fight. A lot of pundits have taken Max Holloway by decision, but I'm going to take the power of Justin Gaethje. The leg kicks. He holds a win over Dustin Poirier, who was the last man to defeat Max Holloway at 155 pounds. So I really like Justin Gaethje in this matchup at minus 140. It's going to be different odds depending upon the sports book you go to. Moneyline Justin Gaethje, Alex Pereira knockout. That's what I got for the main card for my best bets this week. You there, Tom?
Yes, Yep, there we go. Okay.
And then
here.
Also, if fight fans want to put in a finish for Kayla Harrison, me and Tom both really like Kayla Harrison's prospects to get a finish there. If you go KO or sub, the fight can finish either way, knockout or submission, just cannot go to points. If you go to FanDuel Sportsbooks, it's plus 120 for Kayla Harrison by finish. I like that with the plus 130 for Pereira and the minus 140 or whatever you can get at for Justin Gaethje money line. That's our parlay for this weekend.
Beautiful. Love it. And actually, yeah, by the way, the Kayla Harrison, I completely 100% agree with you. I think that might be my lock bet of the week.
I think so. The knockout or sub at plus money.
Yeah, you got to take that, and that's available to you. Zam, since he wasn't able to make it here, he actually did give me all of his predictions, though.
Oh, let's read them off.
All right, he's got Pereira KO or TKO round 2. He's got a Zhang,
just like us.
Yeah, he's got Zhang decision like me. He's going Holloway decision.
He talked to me last night about it. I told him, I was like, if me and Tom are wrong, you're going to be right. I feel like that's how it ends if Holloway wins.
Absolutely. Oliveira's second round finish. Nickel first round submission finish. Oh, Oliveira's a KO TKO, by the way. Okay. Prohaska, he's going with a KO TKO round 1. He agrees with us on Sterling as a decision. By the way, that bet just got even bigger. 3 for 3. Harrison, second round submission.
There you go. All three of us like it.
Lopez decision. Moicano, he's actually going against us.
Wow. I'd love to hear his opinion on
that. He's also going against us on Andrade and Marina. He's going with Andrade by decision.
Wow.
He's got Miller with a finish in round 3. And okay, Zan, what the hell are you doing?
Is he going Cody?
He's going Cody by decision.
Oh, wow. By decision. Put some money on it, Zan. You'll be a rich man.
All right. And I think the fights are about to start because I just turned on the New York Ranger game. And I don't know if any hockey fans out there are following, but potentially Matt Rempe was on the ice taking warm-ups. And so considering the last 2 hits that happened in the last Islanders game, I suspect they were going to have some early fisticuffs.
Oh, really? They're about to fight in that game, you think?
Yeah. So, Brett, I want to say thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Before we get out of here, tomorrow, post-show, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, Pat Dana will join us. Hopefully, Zan is well enough that he will join us as well. And we'll have a lot of post-fight breakdowns, a lot of analysis, and a lot of where do we go from here. And hopefully we're talking about one of the greatest UFC cards that ever has been. Just as much hype as we have going into this.
Enjoy the fights, Tom.
Enjoy the fights, Brett. Before we get out of here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Make sure to subscribe to youtube.com/ETB Network. Make sure to follow us across social media at MMA Outsiders ETB and at ETB Network. Shout out once again to our sponsor in Playback. Go to playback.tv/ETB Network for our live stream schedule. Go to etbpodcast.com for blogs from some of our contributors. Once again, Brett Cagle, thank you so much for joining me, Brett. Dan, a sports industries writer, and of course, the Brett's Bets here at the ETB Network. On Tom Albano, MMA News, Fanside at MMA, PFL. And don't forget to take the MMA Outsiders wherever you go with your podcasts. All right. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the fight. I can't wait.
See you guys.